Our featured guest tonight has found a way to tell powerful and important stories through his art. His sculptures and installations have captured the hearts and minds of people across the world, from Ghana to nearby Montgomery, Alabama. Known for his famous installation Inchinchim in Montgomery, now he's about to start a tour with his new work, Blank Slate. Please give a warm weekly show welcome to sculptor Kwame Akoto-Bamfo. Kwame, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
So your work came to my attention because of your amazing Inchinchim installation in Montgomery, Alabama, which is not too far from where we have this show. But I didn't know much about you personally. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Accra, Ghana, West Africa. And I only came to the U.S. Since 2019.
Oh, wow. So what was family like back there in Ghana?
Well, family was very communal. I think that I had a lot of experience between the 80s and 90s, and there was no internet, and you get to share television. The whole neighborhood gets to share television, and you're not only raised by your family, but everybody else that lives close or around you. So everybody is responsible for checking you. It was an unspoken, code, or it was an unspoken community code.
So you've obviously blossomed into this amazing artist and sculptor. Were either of your parents or any of your siblings artistic? I mean, where did that spark come from?
I think most of my family have been creative, not necessarily visual artists, but I have my siblings are either into culinary arts or writing. So most of them are creative, yes.
So we were talking, I mentioned the installation Inchinchim, but what was the first thing you ever sculpted? And what was that about? What was the subject matter of that?
The very first thing I sculpted, I think it was a sand igloo. Because I was sculpting around 3.
Oh, wow.
I actually didn't know my age then, but my mom says I was age 3, and I think I'm going to take that. So what you would do was to stick your leg into some wet sand, and then you create an igloo around it. And then I found myself being more creative with it. So it was something that we all used to do as kids. But before I realized, I was making faces in the sand. I was drawing various animal shapes in the sand as well.
So there's a lot of different subjects you could have chosen to be the focus of your art. What made you choose slavery, or do you go ahead? Yeah, let's go with that question first, I guess.
Yeah. Number one, I wanted to know about myself through my ancestors. I wanted to learn. I believe that I could and I can project the kind of person I'm going to be and the kind of person that my children are going to probably be if I knew I can plot the path between my current position in the space-time continuum and then my ancestors. And so I didn't necessarily jump at African enslavement. It rather jumped at me through what I was learning through my ancestors. So there, in history and being a Black person and an African, there was no escaping that subject on African enslavement. And I've been raised in such a way that I do love problem solving, and I have a passion for healing and trying to make things better in any little way that I can. So initially, I wanted to tackle that traumatic matter about African enslavement with the hope that I will move on, and tackle other subjects in African history and about African heritage. But the more that I learned about this topic, the more I stayed with the subject, because I realized it wasn't about me anymore. It was about community, and the community being Africans in the African diaspora, Africans all over the world.
Well, one thing that's interesting about the way that Americans are introduced to slavery in the educational system now and how it's taught, it may be very different how some students in some schools are taught versus others. And it may be very different how they're taught based on whether their school is predominantly African American or predominantly Caucasian. When you were growing up, there was obviously you had to have some introduction to the history of slavery. How was it taught to you in your schools?
African enslaved. Ghana is only 60 years old, 64 years. My mother is 64. So we, having been so far from the colonial era and then the colonial influence, and pretty much like most West African or African countries, most countries are barely 70 years old, you know. And whilst the colonialism, as we thought we knew, had ended, there still is the existence of neo-colonial influence, because in Ghana, one of the dialogues that came up in 2021, that's this year, was about whether students can wear their hair, natural. Male students can wear dreadlocks to school or not. And even it took Ghana to dialogue for this boy. It had to even get to high court before this boy was allowed to go to school as a Rastafari person. So the point I want to make is that the colonial influence is still there and is subtle, and as such, and because of that, teaching about slavery in schools is really subtle. They only mention it, and they don't really talk about how it affects us as Africans in this current times.
Kwame, we've got to go to a quick commercial break, pay the bills. Can you stick around till after the commercials?
Yeah, absolutely.